Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulina. Welcome to Islamic Finance Podcast, Season 2, Episode 1. I have to apologize in advance. As you know, we are recording this in a lockdown. We are confined to our homes and other spaces. We just realized that we have a party next door. The neighbors are, celebrating the easing of the lockdown, and they are playing very loud music. It goes between, I don't know what this is, looks like, this is some sort of Arabic, there was all kinds of music going on and drumming. And so we apologize if you can hear that. I can hear it a little bit from time to time. So I hope the mic does not pick it up too much. I'm more worried that, the YouTube doesn't take us down thinking we're playing music or something and the copyright kicks in or something like that. We are ready. Are you ready, Miriam?
Yep, we're ready.
I have some nice coffee with me, and I invite our listeners. I know maybe some of you are driving. One of you told me last week that he's often driving and cannot join our simultaneous sip. So I told him, in season 1, we forgive these kind of things. It's a new thing, and people are getting used to it. So if you are driving, find location nice, relax, pick up some kind of nice beverage. What are you having? Water.
It's a very hot day here in Melbourne.
I have coffee, and I have for the later some nice Moroccan mint tea. Join us now for simultaneous sip. Goes now. 3, 2, 1. Bismillah. I think that was very nice. As you can see, the music from the neighbors stopped. So it's who knows the benefits of the simultaneous sip. Maybe neighbors are listening, so they're enjoying sip and they've stopped doing what they're doing. So we wrapped first season with general introduction to Islamic economy and finance. In this season, we're going to talk about contracts and business transactions. This is probably very boring topic. Or very exciting topic, depends how you approach it. So the question everybody's thinking, beside having a sip of coffee, is there a possible way to make this topic more exciting? What do you reckon? Yes, okay. So for example, we enjoy coffee, you enjoy sometimes water, sometimes tea, some other people told me they like milkshakes and stuff like that. Have you ever thought about, in economy, in society, how do we get these things?
Buy it.
You buy it. Right. So let's say that there was no, like in more simple times, when you didn't have supermarkets, and you want to make this cappuccino, what I'm drinking. So you are producing, you're growing carrots or tomatoes in your garden, and then you want to make simultaneous sip, record a podcast back thousands of years ago. And then you say, oh, you know what? To make that podcast really do so well, I need cappuccino, I need a coffee. First of all, you need a milk. You need to find somebody and maybe trade whatever you have, like, let's say, tomato for some milk. Then you do the same thing for whoever growing coffee beans, yeah? Mm-hmm. What you are doing here is you are exchanging the ownerships of different kinds of things. You are, in a sense, coordinating your activities. You want to achieve something, so you get your milk, you get your coffee, you do that. Now, let's say today, this morning I was going through the drive-through, one of these big chains that make coffee. And the way I purchased the coffee was through the app. Now, because I went there a few times and I purchased it through my bank card, I accumulated 5 purchases, points, and then they are giving me coffee for free this morning. Actually, it's very good. That's why coffee always tastes much better, So when you think about how does that happen, you go to the store and you say, can I have a coffee? And then they make you coffee with understanding that you will pay for that coffee, yeah? In the background, a lot of things happened. Your bank processed the payment, moved money from your account to their account. All right, so a lot of things happen, and it's all built on this sort of trust and understanding of what we are trying to achieve here. Now, the things can get much more complicated. Let's say you're buying something on a credit. Let's say we go to the olden days When Prophet ﷺ went to Medina, he saw people who were getting money for dates for the future. So you have a farmer, he doesn't have money to take care of the garden. He would go to the market to get either money or seeds. Someone would say, I will give you money now for those dates later on. Idea is that this money that you get now, it helps you to plant the dates, and maybe I get, instead of $12 a kilo when the dates are in season, if I give you money now and you deliver dates in the future, I charge you $10 a kilo. So it benefits me in a sense, helps you in a sense. What is going on here? We are trying again to coordinate something. If we don't coordinate, I will not get dates at good price, and you will not get what you need to plant those dates and have a fruit. So there would be a loss between us. Both of us would lose. You would lose the dates, I would lose produce and profit and so on. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to coordinate this activity to cooperate to do something. In this particular situation, we are buying on sort of, let's say, credit, and that is very highly coordinated activity. And we do that by communicating to agree and develop understanding between us. So over time, we are allowing this activity to be coordinated, and there is a plan that we are executing, and we know what to expect from each other. It is this understanding that allows us to work together, that allows us to coordinate activities, and that is what the trust is. So contracts then allow us to have more effective society. So if you look at Islamically, the word contract lexically mean aqd, or plural uqud, refers to something that is tied or bound together. Just like you have a rope, and then you take different ropes and you tie them together in the knot, like your shoelaces, for example. In a similar way, a legal definition of a contract is that it is a kind of a binding agreement. What that does, it creates this legal relationship. See, we enter into these commercial transactions, not as a joke, but to create a legal relationship with regards to subject matter, something that we are transacting. And so this can be enforced. So let me give you some examples. You are buying a car. What are some of the elements that we have in the most basic contract of exchange?
You have a buyer, a seller, and the consideration.
So the first thing that we have, contracting parties. Recently we went to buy a car for your sister. One of the things that we wanted to make sure was that person was the legal owner of the car. You can't just go and anybody sell you any car.
Yeah.
Beside usual conditions that you have in Islamic jurisprudence, that person must be capable of entering into contract, like mature and sane. Person must have legal authority to enter into that contract. Just because you make a contract with a sane and mature person doesn't mean that person is authorized. For instance, if you enter into the office of Google or Amazon and there is an engineer working there or receptionist, and you say to them, would you mind selling me this company called Amazon or Alphabet, Google, And they say, sure, why not? Like, okay, here's a check for $1 million. And you say, well, this is illegal and the legal contract. Obviously, that person didn't have authority to enter. They didn't have ownership required. Contracting parties who are entering into this, they must be capable of entering into a contract. When we were buying that car, we wanted to make sure that person who is selling the car, they are legal owners and everything is legit. Next element in a contract is what we call offer and acceptance. When you went to buy a car, you put certain offer and then person would accept. Just like in restaurants, you say, I want this meal. And their offer was giving you that menu. Yeah? Your acceptance was selecting which item. Now, this offer and acceptance between us can be done in a number of ways. It's not only something formal. It could be informal. I go into the market. It could be some words or gesture or indication or by a conduct that people show that they are transacting. So as long as it's clear what's happening, you are okay.
Yep.
So for example, let's say you go to a vending machine, you want to buy a drink. The fact that vending machine display the price, you put in the coin, offer and acceptance happens. You want to park the car. As soon as you see the sign, $1 for 1 hour of parking, for example, that's offer. You get the receipt once you accept that and pay with all of the conditions that you have to, for example, leave by 4 o'clock or the gate will be closed and so on. One of the things when it comes to the offer and acceptance is that for this to be finalized, it must be in the same sitting, what we call majlis. What that means is that for contract to be binding, it needs to be concluded and finalized before the parties are separated. If me and you have a sort of discussion about a car, buying and selling, for this to be binding and proper contract, we need to finalize what is going on before we separate. The Prophet ﷺ said the contracting parties have a right or option to finalize or not until they separate. Let's say you go inside a store and you purchase something and you say, you know what, forget it, just give me my money, I'm okay. Legally, Islamically, that contract was not finalized. You did not separate. And even though you exchange maybe items, you're still there, still sort of, you didn't separate. It was not clear that it reached a conclusion. So you can still rescind, you can still cancel that sort of arrangement. And in some cases, if person is not very financially literate or something like that, they can put conditions to have an option to rescind the contract after, let's say, 3 days, just in case something goes wrong. And you see that often in the stores, big supermarkets, where you can exchange or return item because they understand that big supermarkets, people go there, there's not too much customer assistance. It's easy to maybe pick a wrong item or make mistakes. So in the interest of customer satisfaction, they make these kinds of ideas. So we have a parties, let's say 2-party or multiple parties. So we have bilateral. Bilateral means 2 parties exchanging. Multilateral, it could be many people. So remember, they are trying to coordinate something. They are trying to cooperate in something. So the next aspect of a contract is the subject matter and consideration. So subject matter refers to the matter that is being transacted. And this is very important in all of the contracts, in everything that we do. There is always subject matter or consideration. Some counter values or sometimes you can call them 2 considerations. Whatever you want, a terminology you want to use. But there is a subject matter and consideration. Something you are buying and selling, and then consideration is the payment. So in your case, when you are buying the car,
Subject matter is the car.
That's right.
Consideration is my money.
Consideration is the money. When it comes to the subject matter, it should be something that exists, it's valuable, it's usable, it's capable of ownership, capable of delivery, possession, it's specified and quantified. If we have a non-existent matter that is being sold, in a sense that it's not clear that we can deliver it, not just that it does not exist. There's some misunderstanding in some circles about selling what you don't have. Issue with selling what you don't have is that you are not certain in the delivery of it. Let's say you go and you say to the person, I will sell you a ton of fish in the ocean. And you go to the sea and you say, give me $10,000, the fish is yours, and you point to the ocean. So what's the problem with that?
You said you were going to give him the fish, and you did, but you didn't.
Right.
Because it's in the ocean. So you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You just took $10,000.
Right. So, but
It
he
wasn't
can
your
take a fish.
subject.
He can take a ton of fish from the ocean. It's his.
It's not his. He's supposed to go. It's not in his ownership. He doesn't have the fish.
Right. So what the problem is?
Doesn't own
I'm
the
not
sea.
stopping him to take the fish.
He doesn't own the sea.
He's free to take it.
Yeah. I don't know.
So there is a bit of a problem here, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
Which comes from how difficult is it to extract the fish from that ocean. So there is an element of difficulty and uncertainty if he can do it. That's not what he signed up for, right? So that's what we mean by selling what you don't have. It's not just the fact that you don't have it. It's the fact that it's difficult to get it. You don't have a certainty of being able to deliver it. If you had a fish farm and you did the same thing, it's a different story, isn't it? Because now you can
see the fish.
You can see the
that
fish.
you're
It's
taking.
you just
Pick it up.
scoop up,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Ton of fish.
So now it's a different story, and this is something that confuses a lot of people. I mean, in terms of having something and then selling it, because it impacts many other things. Like, for example, when you bought that coffee did not exist as a cappuccino, or you order somebody to build you a chair. The issue with buying these products where I have ingredients under my control, fairly certain I can deliver it. So this situation where I have everything I need and I am fairly certain to be able to deliver the product is fairly different from a situation that scholars talk about when they say selling fish in the ocean or birds in the sky, where I do not have certainty of catching and delivering that. Subject matter must be real. And it could be many things. Anything that is in general Sharia compliant asset. And it could be tangible and it could be non-tangible. Copyrighted property or some patent. Whatever is within a normal, socially accepted norms in the society, acceptable as a proper subject matter. And again, you can have it quantified, possess it, specified. It's fine. Would, for instance, oxygen satisfy the subject matter, proper Islamic, in a proper contract? Would you be able to sell the oxygen in this room?
In this room, probably not. But if you're in outer space,
Right.
you could sell oxygen to people that need to go out of space.
Right. So how would you do that?
Put it in those
Containers?
tanks.
Yeah. Right. So you could do that
And it's
even here.
quantified.
Right. Even here.
But here we have it.
Think of the hospitals.
Oh.
They use oxygen during the surgery. So this is the pure oxygen which you need to put in those cylinders. Now, once you put it in a cylinder,
It's quantified. It's
you can
real. It's
you
something.
can stack it, you can own it, you can take possession of it. Sometimes certain things you could have a physical possession, or sometimes constructive. I can bring the car, but if I'm selling you the house, I cannot bring the house when we are transacting. So in that case, possessor has not taken the physical delivery of the commodity, but the commodity has come into the risk and control with all the rights and liabilities of that commodity, including the risk of its destruction. So the reason why we are talking about this is that whatever you are thinking about in terms of commerce and business transaction, whether it's IPOs, listed shares, bonds, business contracts, employment contracts, your online transaction, signing up to your newsletter, selling your book on demand, using any kind of service or product, it's a contract. In our context, we are specifically thinking about transactions which they relate to the commerce. So when you think about what kind of possible transactions can we have, if we know that we have money, if we know that we have some assets, let's call everything that is not money asset, non-monetary. Could be a product or services. If you are a lawyer, let's say, could be jewelry, could be cars, houses, all of these different assets. Everything can be broken down from the very complex financial products, whether they are the derivative or all of these fancy things, to the basic buying and selling the car. They can be broken down to the simple things that you are transacting. And then you can judge whether this is permissible or not. So the reason why we are tackling this contract is to understand the relationship and how the coordination in the world around us in economy work, and also to judge these transactions and contracts by breaking them down to their most basic elements. So when you look at what type of transactions we can do in general, so if we have a monetary assets, money, and non-monetary, let's say other assets. So you could have several transactions where you either exchange money for money, like you go to another country, you need other money. So you say, here's $100 for €50, I don't know what's the now ratio. That's one, money for money. It's a money for different money, but it's still money for money. Or it could be money for the same money. Maybe I have a check, I want to cash it in for the same money. Or there is a cash flow, maybe somebody sell that. Is that permissible? Like we have to know the rules. But cash flow against cash, that's money for money type of contract. So in every contract, there are these two things that are exchanged, this for that. When you're buying a house, it's money for some kind of an asset. If you are doing barter, I'll give you a kilo of dates for a kilo of salt, or I give you iPhone for a computer. So now we have assets for assets. In all of these transactions, something is changed for something on the spot, and then we could complicate it a little bit more where we are doing a credit sale where you give me something now, I give you something a little bit later. Or the third option could be, and I'm not saying these are all permissible or not permissible, we'll see that later, but we could potentially say, I'll give you something in the future and you'll give me something else in the future. Most of these derivatives like futures and options, complex transactions, they are contracts like that. So 3 basic transactions we have. We have a sale, which could be then cash or credit. We have a loan and we have a leasing. Result of each of these transactions will have different implication in respect of liabilities of ownership risk. If you look at the sale, what is the sale? What's happening in the sale?
It's a transfer of ownership.
That's right. In the sale, essential aspect is that ownership is transferred. So before the sale, you have ownership of something, and I have ownership of something. So when we conduct the sale,
Change ownership.
we change the ownership. The defining characteristic of sale is at the time of the sale, this transfer is definite and permanent for both spot or credit price. So what does that mean? As soon as I give you money for the car, let's say $10,000, you give me the car.
I own the money, you own the car.
That's right. What happens if I say to you, we enter into the credit transaction, which is like, I will give you money, $10,000 in 1 year time, and you give me a car now.
You still owe the car.
So this is how you think about it. So you start thinking, okay, so what is actually the contract? When I tell you I will give you money in 1 year, $10,000, and you'll give me car now. What is the subject matter and consideration here?
The subject matter then here be the money.
What kind of money?
In the future.
So subject matter is a car, but consideration would be the money in the future. So what does that mean? What is that?
It's a loan. It's a credit.
It's a debt.
Oh, yeah.
You are giving me a car in exchange for a debt.
Yeah.
So you are now owner of a debt, $10,000. I'm liable for that.
Yeah.
Right? So because it's a sale from day one, car is mine. And you don't have a car anymore. Nothing to do with the car in a sale, but you have
A debt.
a debt of $10,000.
That's a risk.
It's a risk. So what kind of risk is that? It's a kind of default risk.
Yeah.
So the person can default, not pay you. So that's a risk you're taking. So remember, that's why we have a contract. We're trying to coordinate activity, which is that you might not need the money now. You might need money later. He needs a car now. So rather than you never get the money later on, maybe he never gets the car, never gets to do what he needs to do. So we are coordinating these two activities, and we have understanding what's going to happen in the future. And there is also the contract, which is legally binding. So in case you don't pay me, I can do something legally about to force you. That is the sale. And the sale, we will see, it will have a number of different rulings when you can sell what for what in these situations. But the important thing is that in sale, ownership is immediately transferred. So if something did happen to this car, I'm responsible. You are not anymore responsible. As I purchase the car, whether it's cash or credit, I'm the responsible, whatever happens to that car. When it comes to another way of transacting, we have a loan. So what do you think is the difference between a loan and a sale?
So the subject matter would be the money I'm giving you. Let's say I have money and I'm going to loan you money. Then the subject matter is the loan, and what I'm getting is a debt. Yeah.
So here,
You have credit. You're gonna be in the plus, but you're gonna owe me money.
so it's a little bit different than normal commercial transaction, because now I'm not getting anything in exchange. So I'm giving you
Oh yeah,
temporarily
ownership.
So it's a temporary transfer of ownership of goods, assets, and it's free of any payment.
Yeah.
It's not a commercial contract where you are giving some consideration in terms of profit.
Right, yeah.
Where in the other case, you are entering into a contract that can carry profit. There is a consideration part. In this case of loan, debtor is liable to return or pay back the same asset to the creditor.
Yeah.
Okay, third one, it's a leasing. It's a derivative of sale.
So it's temporary ownership until the consideration is paid. No,
So,
it's yeah.
So what happens if I now lease your car? I lease your car from you for I don't know.
I own it until you pay. So once you finish paying, then you own it, and then the contract is finished.
So in a lease, I don't want to go into those lease that ends with ownership and other derivatives of the lease, that now exist today. But just like, let's say, simple lease, like you go to a car hire.
Then for as long as you pay me for an amount of time, and for that amount of time you own the car, and then when you return
so
it.
So what is it that I'm transacting in this case?
Money for temporary ownership.
So temporary
ownership for money.
Okay. So temporary ownership of what?
Of the consideration, the car.
The right to use the car. Okay. So you do not take possession of the car when you lease the car. The car is not yours. So you are lessee, other party is a lessor. What you are doing is you are getting what they call usufruct. Okay, so usufruct means the value or benefit obtained through using something. It comes from the word use of the fruit, manfa, where you are owner of the right to use that car. It is made available to you as the lessee against the payment of rent. Ownership remains with the lessor. He is entitled to these rental payments and is also liable for expenses relating to ownership and loss of asset, if any. Anything that cannot be used without consuming the body or corpus, or which changes in the process of using, cannot be leased out.
Food.
You cannot lease that.
Stationery.
Stationery, like staples, you mean, like or something
like rubber.
Right, yeah.
It's gone after you use it.
Right. You could be able to lease stapler,
but not the staples.
Yes. Fuel, perishable goods, money itself. So anything that to be useful to you, you consume it, you cannot lease that. These are the basic three areas which we are looking. So one is any type of contract of sale or lease. These are commercial contracts. They are very similar in some sense, because you are exchanging something of value for something that you want. There is an asset, whether it's temporarily ownership of right to use it or entire asset. In both of these commercial transactions, you are allowed to profit. Then you have a loan, which is not for profit activity.
Then why would people do loans?
So the people who do loans to help out someone. If you remember our model of Islamic economy, 3 pillars. First pillar is to do with circulating wealth, being generous, trying to help someone without consideration, without a commercial reward. That sort of charity, not-for-profit activities and so on, which will have different rules than commercial activities through which we produce things. Businesses work on commercial terms.
So say, for example, you have a farm and your neighbor has a farm. I have a farm and you have a farm, yeah? And I own a tractor and you don't own a tractor. And so I did my land with the tractor or whatever, and then you want to use the tractor. So I have two options. I can go into a loan or I can go into a sale. I can say you can use the tractor, just return it to me. I mean, sorry, is that lease? No, he's not paying. You're not paying. So I can say, okay, you can use the tractor. I finished using it. Okay, and then you return it to me when you're done. Or I can say, you can use the tractor, but when harvest comes, you need to give me this much at this amount. Something like that.
Right.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So those are your options there.
So you could have different options. Yes, that's right. So what's the question?
So I'm just saying that's like an example. So a loan would be just letting you use the tractor and then I get it back when you're done. And a sale could be, there was two parts to the sale where I get a debt.
It's credit and the spot.
Yeah.
So I could pay you, maybe I buy a tractor from you to work on with the cash, maybe in installments.
Or I can say that once you're like you have the fruit, I want, I don't know, 50% of your crop or something like that.
Yeah, so that would be more complex sort of arrangement. That would be more like a partnership where we are doing something, and then my contribution to that partnership would be some tools, and then we decide to share profit from that in certain way. Or you could just give me as a loan, just let me have it. Without commercial consideration, lease it to me as well. In all of these cases, we have situation where people, out of their own free will, are entering into contracts with their own understanding what benefits they are getting and what they are transacting. Okay, they create expectation whether this is a commercial transaction or two friends, and what are the terms and conditions. So what Islam wants in all of these things is that, number one, there is a justice and freedom is there given to you to engage in these transactions. Today we talked about some of the idea how society cooperates, and the contract is at the top of that cooperation. The essence of a contract comes down to the types of transaction. And when we analyze simple or complex transactions, if you understand the contract and what is being transacted at every given moment, you will understand basic Islamic rules for these transactions. I did not speak about permissibility or not permissibility of each of these transactions, because it would all depend. If I said to you, somebody asked me, is it permissible to own the shares? We break it down exactly. So what would be the shares in the company?
Ownership of part of the company.
Ownership of the part of the company. When I buy the shares, then I buy the part of that company. What is that company? They're making furniture or they are doing some business. We would need to understand what business that company is in, and then the ownership of those shares would be the ownership in that sort of business. Let's say there is a company that doesn't have any property. People just started this company and it's got $100 million sitting in a bank account and nothing else. They want to do something. They want to build the houses, buildings. It's like a fund. Let's say it's a fund and you're buying the shares in that fund. And so you have a 1% of that $100 million fund. What is the subject matter if I'm buying 1% of that fund?
One share.
One share, which is what? Which is $1 million. That $1 million, when I'm exchanging now, when I'm buying that with money, it will be as if I'm buying any other money. It's not going to be like some sort of, it's a share, it's very specific. It's a money for money transaction. Now, the question will be, can I buy this for $900,000, this share? Because think about it. Now, this percent represents $1 million. And now, can I buy it at 0.9 million? Or can I buy for 1.1? So these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. And this is where Islam has certain rules, which would be completely different if that funds, let's say, buy 6 months after that, buys the building, and now they are owners of the building, that fund or a business. So they purchase $100 million building. But now the 1% in that fund represents what?
A floor.
It represents undivided ownership in that building, which is now equity. ownership of real estate. So now I don't anymore have ownership of 1% in 100 million. I have ownership of 1% in a real estate, in a building itself. So this is what we call equity. Now, in this case, if I'm doing a sale of this 1%, it's a different rules. Can I buy it for less or more? Negotiate the price. So in Islam, we could do that then, where in the first case we wouldn't, because the laws of exchange, the transaction pertaining to riba, stipulate that we must exchange when it comes to money for money, must be 1-to-1. When it comes to money for some other assets, we can negotiate the price. It doesn't have to be like what you originally paid for. That's where you get the profit from. You understand? So all of these things, in order to judge whether it's simple or complex transaction, you need to understand the contracts. You need to understand what is it at the base we are exchanging. This for that, what is it that we are exchanging? Okay, that was our first episode for the season 2. Thank you for listening. Don't worry if you don't still understand a lot of different rules and how to transact. This whole season will be about those rules, and inshallah you will learn what is permissible, what is not permissible. This episode was supposed to be just a small sample or highlight of some of the key components. So don't worry if you are not still 100% about how everything works. As we go along, we will discover and learn more and more of these rules, and we will have plenty of examples where you will be able to do the case study and think about different scenarios. So thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe to our email list so you are up to date with all the new updates. Subscribe to our social media channels. You can find us on all the usual places from Instagram to Facebook, Twitter, and so on. Wish you all the best and see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.